You're live, Mayor.
Thank you. This will be more of an informal educational session, so question and answers are encouraged. We do have a question and answer period at the end of it, but certainly if you have a question while we're going through the meeting, please just raise your hand and we'll do our best to accommodate everybody's questions. I also want to thank everybody for coming today. We don't get a whole bunch of people at our monthly board meeting, so I was hopeful that the turnout today would be good since we did Saturday. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're going to ask that everybody in attendance please set their cell phones to silent or vibrate. The board will offer a question and answer period at the end, but again, comments or questions, just raise your hand during and we'll do our best to accommodate. And I am going to turn it over to Alderman Grant for the invocation.
Bless this town and may it remain a beautiful and friendly place to live. We pray that this board makes fair and informed decisions today. We also pray that our police officers, firefighters, and members of our armed services here and around the world remain safe as they risk so much for our security. We also pray that our town be spared the ravages of hurricanes and other natural disasters, and that everyone associated with the town remains safe and secure. And also, could we just do maybe 5 seconds of silence for the people in Ukraine right now? That's what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, I wanted to welcome Mr. Fran Way. You want to come up to the podium, Fran? And really, we're just asking if you could do similar to what you do every month for us. Just take us through the beach projects, and then we'll ask questions as we go.
Sure. My name is Fran Way. I'm a coastal engineer with Applied Technology and Management. We also have the TI Coastal, Chris Gibson and his crew. They are on the coastal engineering team that is working for the town. Here's the 5 different phases of shorelines, a little over 11 miles of total shoreline for North Topsail Beach. We're starting at phase 1 up near New River Inlet, going all the way down to phase 5 at the Surf City border. We have several projects going on. Sure. Sure.
There we go.
Sure.
Thank you.
So and these just to back up, these phases were developed in about 2009 with a big environmental impact statement that the town did, just to try to figure out which segment out the shorelines. Phase 1 is along the New River Inlet. That is characteristically the highest erosion area along the shoreline. Phases 2 through 5, they're characterized by the state as kind of a moderate to mild erosion, 2 feet per year. But, obviously there still is some erosion there, but it's not as bad. Phase 5 was kind of delineated because it is not a COBRA zone, and that is the Coastal Barrier Resources Act. And that is a fish and wildlife thing where back in the 80s and 90s, the phases, basically half of phase 1, and then phase 2, 3, and 4 all got put into this COBRA zone, and that limits funding for FEMA projects. And it doesn't totally take that out, but it does limit that, and it also severely limits Corps funding. Now, the Corps and FEMA have a few little workarounds, but in general, it is very hard to get federal money in those COBRA zones, and that's why the Aldermen and the board has been trying for decades now to get that area out of the COBRA zone. But I think that's important just to bring up here. For now, we have several projects going on. We're permitting and working on a project up in phase 1. We still have a little bit of dune project left in phase 2 near the pier. And then we have the phase 5 project that's a truck haul, and that's a FEMA-related category G, FEMA-related engineered beach project down in phase 5, and that will be starting actually this Monday. And that is related to the town's project, their big project in 2015 where they put 1.3 million cubic yards down there. So we have we have basically 3 kind of projects we're trying to get online here. The phase 5 one is online pretty much coming up on this Monday. We want to finish the phase 2 project, and then the phase 1 up near the New River Inlet, the Topsail Villas. That's still in permitting with the sandbags there and near the inlet. It's an inlet hazard area. It takes a little bit longer to permit and to process. So that's where we are. Next.
Before you leave that?
Yes.
Would you mind, because I'm not sure everybody knows, would you explain to them what category G means?
Sure. The FEMA it's a lot of times with this federal funding, as the board has been aware with the Army Corps of Engineers can take over a beach and do all the nourishments, and that's kind of what they're doing for Surf City, even though that there's a crazy amount of sand and probably over-designed. But the other way you can do it is also if you do a beach nourishment yourself, like the town did in 2015. That is that FEMA recognizes that as a category G, as an engineered beach, which does protect the upland infrastructure, houses, homes, roads, property. And so they realize there is a benefit to a big beach as a storm buffer. And the Corps does too. And basically the Corps and FEMA do these things as storm buffers to prevent upland damage. The category G refers to just engineered beaches, and there are some other items in there and you can look it up, but the category G just is pretty much, it refers to the engineered beach and recognizes that the town of North Topsail Beach has that. So whenever a large storm comes in, Florence, Dorian, and it's a state declared disaster, FEMA can come in and work with the town, and we can develop losses, and they will only pay losses to the storm, like Florence or Dorian, but they'll come in and help out the town. And that's what this category G project is for now. For the one in phase 5, it's mostly for Florence damage, but there is actually a little bit of Dorian damage as well. And obviously Florence is much more damaging than Dorian to the shoreline, so that kind of makes sense that the Florence volumes is 600,000, whilst the Dorian volumes is only 30,000. And so pretty much every time there's a storm that comes in to Onslow County that's declared a disaster, federal disaster, FEMA will come in, and we work with the FEMA representatives and try to figure out what the damage was done and what FEMA can do to help mitigate that damage.
I just think it's important for people, because this came up in our beach committee. When the town did the G, the difference in what they're willing to restore is that the other categories basically will work on the dunes. G allows basically restoring the whole beach, correct? Correct, out to the beach. And see, and that was the other item that basically, even though the phases 2, 3, and 4, and in part of 1 are in that Cobra zone, because Florence was just so damaging, and especially to the dune, FEMA did allow some dune mitigation there, and that was our dune project. But they would not allow so that was kind of one of their exceptions, where they said, okay, this is Cobra zone, but we are going to help you with this dune project. And so that is, that the category B, that's just for dunes. And it would be better if the D was, yeah. But category B is for the dunes, and category G is for the beach. But so the category B is the project we're finishing up, and there's still about a mile left along phase 2 near the pier that we want to, we intend to finish here. We want to finish here by the end of this April
where we have the windows open. But so there's a category G, engineered beach, and that's down in phase 5. And then there's a category B, which was just dune restoration, and that is FEMA, and that is from phases 1 through 4. There is actually a little bit of engineered beach in phase 1 as well. Phase 1 is split up. Phase 1 is really the only phase that has half of it is Cobra Zone and half of it is not. And so we kind of have to kind of work around that a little bit, but yes.
Well, I have 2 points I just wanted to make. There is a small portion of federal flood also in phase 2, which we haven't touched. It's Cobra all around.
You're
it,
correct.
so
Yeah,
it's
the
a
Marina
little
Way
bit-
area, yes.
Yeah, from Barton Bay down
Mhm.
past Bay Court. And then just to give folks an idea of how much sand this is for phase 5, Fran, so if we take a look at what Topsail Beach has down on the very south end, I mean,
Mhm.
they have a huge beach. Are we going to be near that level of sand or a little bit less? I'm just trying to give a visual.
A little bit of less, but it's going to be, over 100 feet of sand.
Okay.
And so it's going to be a large, and this will be beach sand, this won't be dune sand. And that's, yes. That is all of phase 5, but we're only getting started this spring, and then we'll have completed. We plan to complete it the following year, which was November 2022 into the spring.
So is Gray Street like the marker and you're working north in the spring? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, we're starting. Gray Street is the access, and I have a figure, but yeah, well, that's fine. Yeah, Gray Street is the main access for all the heavy machinery, and we'll go there and start north, but then we'll also go, we probably won't finish the whole northern edge, and then we will have to go south as well, but, yes?
So you're
Fran-
saying
Fran.
phase
Just-
2 we-
Fran, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, for purposes of the minutes, do you want the people to identify themselves?
Right, just as a point of order, if we could just give our names and addresses when we acknowledge you to ask a question, and I'll point to you and say, go ahead, just so that we have a chance to get it into the minute. So, ma'am, your name was?
Brenda Morse,
Okay,
2706
thank you.
23rd Avenue.
And sir, you go ahead. Your name, sir?
Ben Rackley, 1316 New River Inlet Road.
Thank you, sir.
Phase 2 is gonna be finished April, you say?
That's the plan,
Okay. Cause I haven't had any sand
yes.
in 2 years. All I have is just a little burn there, and it's about breached now.
Yes, we've had some, we know that there are actually some other, the king tide events and the nor'easters that have been happening recently have been eating into the dune system, either the existing dune system and the newly placed sand. And the town has been contacted by several about these events, and it's concerning, and we're trying to get there, but again, these events usually aren't big enough that a federal disaster is declared, and so basically, the funding elements, when FEMA gets involved, the funding is a lot easier to come by. And then the town has its own funding, but then obviously, working with the county, working with the state, trying to find funding. These projects are expensive, and getting that material is tough. And for some of these areas that don't really qualify for anything, it's difficult. And then we are just seeing a lot more king tides. We're seeing the 10-year water level events. 10-year event you should only see once every 10 years, but we're seeing those a lot more frequently now, and we'll still have to start. We're adjusting for that, but that is the plan.
I think everyone understands the expense of it.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am? Yes, ma'am?
Sandy Confair, 2740 Island Drive.
Okay.
I live right there at Gray Street, and can you explain to me exactly how the sand is going to be put out? I heard that it was just going to be a ledge, and we're not adding to the existing dunes. There's a lot of homes right there on Ocean Front that their dune is now like 5 feet in the air. So how are they even going to get down off of their land if all we're doing is just like a ledge? And how far out is the ledge going? Isn't the ocean just going to wash it away again?
It will get into Deb, can you forward to one or two more slides? Let me see. Then, or do I have a? Is there a PowerPoint that I can or clicker? This is the dune hall that we're intend to finish north of the pier, and this is a similar. You can see here. This is the design. This is the beach profile. Here's out in the water, and here's the dune, and here's that eroded dune, and obviously this is kind of that dune hall where we're just putting material in front of the dune, trying to repair the dune.
Right.
So next slide, please. Yeah. This is the one up in the top of Villas. This is not a dune project. We're really not allowed to do dune projects there. But we can go to the next one, please. This is what we're going to do here. This is a cross section here. So here's the dune up here, and I'm doing this.
You're okay, Fran.
We talk to you all the time, Fran.
This is the dune profile right here, and here's out in the water. And here's the dune project, and you're talking about that erosional escarpment, that big kind of cliff.
Yeah, because right now the ocean's coming up to the dune at most days.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy.
So we are putting this material out in the water a little bit, in the intertidal area, and this will be the lower beach. So this is completely different from the dune project. We're putting sand out on the kind of the upper beach into the intertidal beach. And so here's the dune, and here's the escarpment's probably up in here. And then this material is actually going to go, it's going to start really at kind of at the toe of the dune and go out into the water.
Oh, so
And
it's
so it will wash away. And so it's into the system though. And that's just the system, and that's why it will wash. This is kind of a system, and that's the way. If we infuse a lot of sand into this system, it's a healthier system. It's got a better storm buffering capabilities, and it's got a more recreational beach as well, and better habitat for these turtles.
So, Fran, just to add on to that, I think what some folks get concerned when we place sand on the dune or the berm, and then also on the beach, and as you said, it's not going to stay exactly where we put it, but it's into the waves will break out, end up with the beach, but we can't the ocean.
Definitely. And then we saw that with that project up near the Topsail Reef. The dredger, the Army Corps of Engineers, they put, about 200, 300,000 cubic yards of material, a good amount of material, but the beach really didn't show much. But we could account for that sediment into the beach system, and it does make for a healthier beach system. Now, another important thing with this project is that for the dune project, it was easy. You could, for beach walkers, you could walk up and down the beach. You could walk past. You could walk near the water line and avoid the heavy machinery and everything. For this project, you can see that we can't do that. We're going to have to shut off sections of the beach. And sometimes you can get up near the dune and try to get around. We're going to have to see. Sometimes there might be a little bit of room to get around the dune, up near the dune, and get around the heavy equipment. But otherwise, you might have to just get out an existing public beach if you really want to walk the entire beach or something. Get at a public beach access and then re-enter, around the equipment. So this will be a little more for beach walkers and things. It's going to be a little more inconvenient than the dune project because we're putting so much material here. So, and then here's a gray street right about here. And then basically they're just going to build out the beach there and start working their way north, and we'll see how it goes, and we will continue to work north until we have March and April to place material. Then the turtle nesting season goes. Sometimes we can get a few weeks extension into May, but we'll have to see. And then we'll keep working north, and then we'll pick up next November and continue the project. Yes.
Jeff Stevens, 284 Seashore Drive. What's the status? Because I live south of Gray Street. What's happening in that area? Is that completed in your view, or when will that be?
That will be next season. That's starting, November. and then next season we'll get a good early start on it. You know, there's lots of balls in the air with the permitting, the funding, you know, getting all this, the FEMA coordination. But we'll have, you know, February, November, January, all the way out to April. So we'll have a good like 5-month window to place this material next time, when versus we only have about 2 months this kind of spring. Yes.
Fran, why don't
Alderman
you
Betts.
explain why we're having to do this project over 2 seasons? It's something to do with 15-yard trucks hauling 15 yards of sand at a time, and how many yards you are placing in the project. So it's just not possible to truck that much sand that fast out of the mine over that short a period of time, because it takes time for the mine to dredge the sand, pile it. Trucks haul 15 yards at a time. We're talking about over 40,000 truckloads of sand coming to the island, right?
Yes.
So it just physically can't be done in one winter season.
Yeah, it's just production rates pretty much. So, you know, a large offshore dredge. The project in 2015 that put 1.3 million cubic yards down, that was an offshore dredge, and the offshore dredge's production rates, they can, you know, 20,000 cubic yards a day is a good amount for them, sometimes 10. But for, yes, as Mayor Pro Tem Benson mentioned, that the production rates here is maybe about 2,500 cubic yards a day. That's the anticipated production rate. So it's about 10 times less. But it's very good material. It's very good color. It's very good coarseness. It's very similar to the stuff that we put in there. It's got great. It's processed here, and actually, in these truck hauls, it can be argued that the truck hauls are keeping more money in the local economy versus paying a dredger that is based out of some other state or somewhere else. But the truck hauls are a little bit more of an inconvenience because of the traffic.
And the other thing we found out about the quality of this sand as comes to the dunes is the turtles love it. We had as many nests this year in that Category B area that had dunes restored as ever. And we had more nests in North Topsail Beach in our 11 miles than the other 2 towns, I believe. So they like that. The turtles like the sand.
Well, but that is very important because we have the state and federal regulators that's really all they're concerned about. So we have to make sure that they're happy as well. So sure. We jumped ahead, but I mean those are pretty much the 3 projects that major projects that are happening, and this is the one that is obviously happening here on Monday, and we are we're still planning on working. And then we have Deb, can you go to the next slide, please? This is just the Onslow County Beach Access 4, which is just this is a minor, just a dune replacement where the dune got flattened here, and we do want to put this dune together, and the town is working with the county to repair this. It's a minor permit modification, but the one issue again with this one is the dune crossovers and new crossovers. The state has been very restrictive of new crossovers, but obviously we want to put a big dune along this area as a continuous buffer, so we can prevent any flooding on New River Inlet Road and the park along the way, which this is one of those areas during those king tide events that floods, the road floods. So we're working with the state regulators to make sure that we can put a crossover on this area, even though the regulations basically if you have a crossover, just rebuild it in an existing footprint, because if you really want to try to extend it out on the beach, they won't allow that unless you have a very mature dune. And the state has the state's been more and more restrictive on kind of dune crossovers, what you can do when you rebuild. And then we're running into that already here for county access. It's just public beach access.
Deborah Coltrane, 210 Gunny Sergeant Boatman Drive. Doesn't fit on your address label. My question is, living past that, when you're talking about the road flooding, that it causes obviously corrosion on your car, you can't go through it, etc. Is there a way that you could put a hard structure next to the road to keep the flooding from getting onto the road?
We've had that conversation a few times specific to in front of the Mr. Peters Park
Yes.
there. And I think it requires special permitting. I don't think that we've even gotten that far, because our desire was to, and I'm looking at Mr. Mayor Pro Tem to see if he's got thoughts on it, but the desire was to fix the dune structure itself to
Well, I
prevent it from
understand,
happening.
but what's happening when it gets on the road is people north of that can't.
But it's not just that one area. There's all kinds of areas throughout the whole town that flood, specifically down near the South End Fire Station.
Oh, yeah.
And I also don't think that residents would want to see concrete barriers going up and down Island Drive or New River Inlet Road either. So there has to be different ways we can look to address that issue, would be, and that's just my personal opinion. I think Mayor Pro Tem has one.
This is an aside. The Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission is part of the North Carolina Resilient Coastal Communities Program. We have a community action team, and we've been focusing on projects island-wide that would minimize flooding you're talking about. And the number one project that seems to keep coming to the top of our list is stormwater and stormwater management. And hopefully, as this process is a state program, hopefully as it moves forward, we'll be able to get a grant to do the design work that will then allow us to apply for grants that will help mitigate road flooding, because it's a serious problem, particularly on New River Inlet Road. Many spots, just not at the town park.
Island Drive too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm one. I had one other question I wanted to ask. I don't know if folks have been on our website recently, but staff has done a good job of information up when you get on about the truck haul. And I would like to ask town manager if she could just on what she's thinking as far as communication on the project. As I know you guys will be in communication on a daily basis, but pictures or kind of where as we go, just so folks who aren't here have an idea of the project.
Started, Fran and I, on a daily basis, impending project. The has notice Thursday as a fact. The start of the Gray Street action project starting on Monday. Talking about trying to get ahead of to give notice to people who live in that area and how they will be affected. Previous projects, once it starts, we will our staff will be down there to give a report. Last time we did a just so you can see in real time what's ongoing with the project, and just talk about what you should be, you know, the conditions in the area where you should maybe be and not be at this point in time as the project goes on. So we have been trying to do more notifications to the public. Another thing that we have been working on is, as you said, we were updating the current website, the Shoreline Protection page, which we made staff has made a lot of updates to recently in the last 3 weeks or so. But we're also working on development of a new website, which is going to be about 5 months out. We're in the design phase right now. We work on it daily with Civics Plus Municode, who has been selected to work with us on the site and design it. They are nationally recognized as a website designer that does city sites. So we were very excited to work with them. And part of it is we're looking at doing a projects page. So you'll be able to get more up-to-date information down the road as far as a dashboard. You'll be able to see each project, where it's at, and estimated completion times as we proceed. So that's just a look into the future as far as communication and website.
So for now, though, folks can, if they don't have social media, they could go right onto the town website and see information. If they have social media, we'll be posting information there as well. If they still have questions, is it best for them to email in or call in? How would you like? What is most efficient, I guess is my question.
Most efficient, of course, is going to be email. Of course, you're welcome to call. Email is always best. And we'll certainly, respond quickly. And of course, within 24 hours, you can expect a response.
Thank you. Perfect.
And just to add on, the dune project, they were putting less material per linear foot, so the project could move faster. This project, we're building out the beach. It's going to be the project will move more slowly down here in phase 5 than compared to the dune projects. So.
Okay, I think we can probably move on to the sea oats planting. And I think, Fran, you're going to give us an update on that. I get a lot of questions just in general. At the area where we haven't yet placed sand
Yes.
on New River Inlet. Should I pull my plants up? Should I leave them in? So if we could just talk a little bit about the current status of what we're doing with sea oats and then what people should do.
Yeah, so the CO planning is still, going to happen. It's planned. We're top of the list of priority with the Coastal Transplants, who does a lot of the planting. They have their own greenhouses here in the state. They're going to start May 1. They're going to go and they're going to pick up where they took off last year, and they're going to plant not just the crest of the dune, but also the face of the dune. And they're going to plant and just continue planting that and watering and fertilizing. And then they're also going to go back and fix up any of the areas that didn't take well last season. Steve Mercer with Coastal Transplants, he's been doing this for decades. He really doesn't want he needs to make sure that we're past when frosts and things like that, and he looks at soil temperatures and things before he plants to ensure that these sprigs will have a really good chance at survival. Not 100% survival, but a really good chance. And so he really wants to wait till May, so he knows that's optimal planting time for the sea oats. And so that's what he's going to start here, and he's going to continue to work, and then he's going to work back. And so May, June, July are they're all very good months for that. And then he does hook up into a water hydrant. He waters the sea oats. He has some fertilizer. He fertilizes sea oats, and we can provide I forget what it's not your standard fertilizer because it's that sandy soil, but the fertilizer is pretty common. We could see what it is, and obviously he knows really well. But that should start this May 1, and then they are going to go back and look at any other spots that haven't done well. And he was actually even scouting. He's been scouting some of the areas already, kind of pre-project, and he's been out there a few times, checking out where he needs to go, where he needs to go back and do what plants took well, what didn't. In terms of private homeowners, if they want to kind of enhance their we're
It
not-
can't hurt, but they don't
Yeah.
need to pull their plants up if
No,
they put some in,
no.
because it'll, I know, but that's just a question I keep getting. I understand that they'll eventually come up back through.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and there's some can die and
Right.
not come back. But yeah, no, if they get buried or something, or if they are used to, it's a dynamic system that dunes are usually more stable than the beach. But yeah, those plants, if they do get buried, or they get, some sand, that they can, make it through.
So, Fran, the areas where the berm has already kind of washed back into the system,
Yes.
what do we, is there any plan to plant anything there?
Yes, I think we're going to, the dune slope, even though there has been some erosion there, it's almost like that. A lot of times we use the word equilibration when we go out there and we put this material, and then we construct it and make it, with our machinery and everything, and then we pretty much we let Mother Nature kind of work it for the following year almost, and kind of equilibrate it. And Mother Nature says, well, you did an okay job of putting this profile out, but I'm going to reshape it the way I want to reshape it. And that's even with the dunes, where the dunes, we said, okay, we're going to put the toe of the dune here. That's, the 10-year water level. That dune shouldn't get hit. And then we get a king tide event that has that 10-year water level that hits that dune toe, and then we get some of that erosion, and that material goes into the beach. That material still is in the beach, and I know that's a huge complaint about beach nourishment, where people say, well, you put this beach here and now all the sand's gone 3 months later. The sand is really in the system, and I'm a big believer in that, where that sand is still there and it's still working and still helping. But I know that perception that you're just putting the sand in the water and it's disappearing, but it really isn't. But at the same time, we don't have the resources to go out there on every king tide event and fix up hotspot erosion.
Okay, Alderman.
Just real quick so everybody understands, because I've had this question asked too. Every part of the beach that we are working and fixing on will eventually have plantings on it, correct? Because what happened last time was we put sand down, but then we ran out of time because it was too cold to put those down. So that any work that's being done, like if you're down in phase 5 and you see them rebuilding the beach there will be plantings everywhere, correct?
Now, see, phase 5 for the planting, phase 5 we're just doing beach, we're not doing dune, so there won't be any plantings there, and there were already plantings for the phase 5 already got the dune, the Matthew truck all. So actually, the phase 5 project, there won't be any dune planting. And there was a few years ago.
Well, when they put the sand down after Florence, all along the Ocean City part of the beach, which is the left and right of Gray Street,
Uh-huh.
a couple of the owners planted seagrass, but a lot of them didn't. And a lot of that sand is gone. I mean, right there at the greenhouse that sits right on the corner of Gray, the dune was all the way up to their porch. Well, now you can walk underneath their porch because all of that is gone. Nobody planted anything. So any dune that's there has no seagrass on it. At all.
Fran, is that something we could check on? Because I think the goal was
Yes.
the whole dune structure would have been planted, whether it was planted previously because we did the phase 5 dunes
Yes.
prior, last year, not this year,
Yes,
but the
let me
rest
get-
of them. So if we could just check on that.
I just might add, while Fran's making notes, that the phase 5 area he's talking about was restored, the dune was restored with Matthew, and it was planned with sea oats back in whenever that was, 2016, 2017. So, with the new project, just sand going on the beach, homeowners in that area would consider purchasing their own plants and planting it, because we have already planted it, so to speak, when we did the Matthew project.
But a lot of the dunes were destroyed then in Florence, and they added the dunes again after Florence. And a lot of those homes along the beachfront there on the Ocean City part of the beach are just want that monthly rent.
The dunes after Florence are being replanted as part of the CO's program,
That's my question, because
Well-
Fran was just,
But-
his statement was that they are not.
but not in phase 5.
That's the question.
Okay, and so the Phase 5 June project occurred in what, 2019, 2020, so it was following Florence. So that, they put that new material there, and they did go back and replant that material. So that, but then maybe a few sections didn't take. I guess that's the, they didn't do any at all?
I don't think we planned.
Okay, there's no Phase 5
No
Dune.
place- So that, I think
Okay.
that's the question, if
Okay.
that's something that we could investigate.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So the question I get is, and I'm sure a lot of board members do, and a lot of folks have questions about them, for new homes, what will CAMA allow and not allow, but also as it relates to the berm structure, and then also is it different for repairs? And I'm not sure how much detail you have on this topic, but it's one that comes up almost every day for me.
Yeah, no, and I understand, it was one of those things where it was about 5 years ago where it did seem like the state was pretty flexible with crossovers and rebuilding crossovers, and then there were a few exceptions that all of a sudden the state got incredibly restrictive with crossovers. Maintaining them and repairing them and putting them, keeping them in their same footprint is the easiest thing to do. Expanding or extending them, out onto the beach farther is very difficult, where the DCM is basically, and that's the Department of Coastal Management, DCM, they're basically interpreting as the dune has to be, healthy and mature with, significant CO, beach grass growth before you can put anything on that area. And so before you do so basically you try to keep your crossovers in good shape, and if they are, if they do need repair, just make sure you're keeping the dimensions and everything the exact same as they were existing. That's the safest thing to do. Even with this project here, the state and DCM have been, this is a public, county parking lot where we want to just do a crossover, and there is no crossover, but obviously if we want to do one continuous dune, people need to get to the beach. It's a beach access, area. And they're like, well, no, we can't do that, but we'll work with you this, because we realize that this is, an important thing. And so DCM is, but it does seem to be a kind of a very kind of restrictive viewpoint on those crossovers now.
Right, and they will allow things like a rope, kind of post and rope, I'll say directional, to help people figure out how to get to the beach. The problem that we're experiencing, as I had mentioned, with some folks who have lost their berm sand, like over in Dolphin Shores,
Yeah.
that's a pretty steep cliff. So we're gonna have some areas that are just gonna take some time, I think, to, as you said, recalibrate, and then hopefully we'll be able to get back to healthy dunes so people can access the beach easier. I think there's beach mats. There's a couple things that they do allow. Right, Mike?
Right. The town of Topsail Beach, when they were doing their beach nourishment and dune restoration work, got a variance from the Coastal Resources Commission to use a beach mat, and basically it's just like a rubberized walkway that's laid down directly on the sand. It prevents the sand from moving so much when people walk across it, but it was a spatial variance, and so we're going to have to do the same thing at the county beach access to get people over to the beach, is put a beach mat in, because it will help prevent foot traffic from sort of lowering that. Every time you walk up a sand face, some of it goes behind, right? We all know that. We've tried walking up, well, the beach map prevents that kind of thing from happening. But it's expensive, and we have to go to the CRC for a variance to use it in North Carolina.
At this point, if it's all right, I want to ask the board members if anybody has any questions additionally for Fran that have come up today.
Before we go into that, can we just further address the crossover
Oh,
since
yes,
we're on
ma'am.
that topic?
Yes, ma'am.
We did have a question in regards to Shipwatch Townhome Villas with the crossover that was damaged during the last project.
Mis-
Yes.
Ms. Darian, and Mayor and Board, Fran and I have been addressing that. It's legal in nature. I don't want to get into legal strategy and legal advice, but it is our hope that that will be addressed by next Friday. If not, the town may step in, take care of it ourselves, and then seek compensation back from CM Mitchell. Fran, is that accurate?
Yes, that is. And then I completely agree.
And then, so, and actually, before we move on to board questions, do we have any that were sent in or emailed in?
The crossover was,
Just that one.
with Shipwatch was one question that had come in.
Do we have any other ones? Okay.
No.
All right, then I'll just go around. Connie, do you have any additional questions for Fran at this point?
No, I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Hart?
No.
No?
What we just said about that beach mat, why, this is gonna be paid by the county, right, not the town? That is a county access, so the, okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't paying for it, because they won't let us park there.
All right, anybody from the audience have any additional questions that weren't answered today? All right, we have a couple, so we'll start right here. That's okay.
The email, if we have questions during the project, to email our questions, what was the email? I mean, is it a common one or some
You can-
particular
We're getting
person?
You
used to the
can-
microphone.
You can email me at townmanager@ntbnc.org.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not more of a question, it's just, is there any way that we can really, are you guys finding people if you actually see them on the dunes? Is there any way that we can stop people from being on the dunes? Because they let their kids climb up the dunes and they roll down them. And if you say something to you, they just say, okay, and they take them off, and then you keep walking and you come back and the kids are right back up there rolling down the dunes. And, I mean, when the tide's up real high, they actually sit on the dunes and do their partying and play their games. I mean, are we monitoring them? Are we finding these people for that?
Do you want to respond?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had a beach ambassadors program, particularly in the summer, where we had college students or retired people that like to just, get out and talk with our beach visitors, remind them of those rules and why we have those rules in place. But I'm not speaking for the police chief, but there is the possibility, if people are belligerent about it, that they could be cited and fined. But I think it's more of a positive thing with maybe a beach ambassadors, and we each could be beach ambassadors when we're walking the beach and we see something like that going on. It's not just say you shouldn't do that, but why you shouldn't be climbing on the dune.
Yeah, you try to explain it to them, and they say, well, we pay money to stay there, we'll do what we want.
Exactly, yeah.
I
mean,
would-
It's ridiculous.
I would like to add that we do have a position that we will be advertising for that's in the budget for a beach patrol person that will be going up and down the beach to monitor. Now, that's separate from what Mr. Benson is saying as far as beach ambassadors, but they will be going, that person will be tasked with going up and down the beach and to educate people as far as filling in holes, removing your personal property before you leave, and of course, keeping off the dunes.
Did you want to add something, Mr. Swanson?
Yeah, this question that you just had came up a couple of years ago, and according to what I understand from the police department is, even though the signs are there, if you don't have a no trespassing sign on the dunes, there really isn't much they could do about it.
My
Now,
understanding.
I don't,
He's looking at, my understanding was a little bit different, and we have to separate berm from dune, first of all, because if it doesn't have sand and it's not vegetated, it's not considered a dune as far as us being able to find them. And the other challenge that I've heard is the police officers actually need to see them doing it, or potentially this beach person that the town manager just mentioned, because if they've already gotten off and the police officer gets there, they can't really find them based on hearsay from somebody else. So there's some it would be nice if it was that easy, but there's been some challenges as far as finding folks. I'm not saying that we've never found them, but, and also even one person going up and down the beach, they can't be everywhere all the time. It's over 11 miles, so they could get down there and somebody's on the dune up here. It's not been an easy, thing to enforce.
Yeah.
I thought they had changed the definition of what a dune was when they added all that new sand and didn't plant on it yet, because I thought there was an email, I saw something on Facebook that said they changed the definition of a dune. If it was a hill, it was considered a dune.
I could be wrong, and Fran, if you could clarify, my understanding is that's a berm, if it's not got stable vegetation on it or vegetated.
Well, and see, and it's unfortunate, but the term berm can mean several things. Even the FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers use the term differently. So yeah, because a berm, a lot of people think berm is more like a dune or like a big earthen berm. But, you know, a lot of times the Army Corps of Engineers, what we talk about when we saw berm, we're talking more like the upper beach where you can walk and everything. But then the FEMA can consider the dune a berm. So that's a tough one. But it's the same thing as what the mayor is talking about, where the state is, you know, if you put new sand down, a new dune in, the state's restrictive on your not only crossovers, but even, you know, dune fencing. And obviously the fencing's got to be in kind of the V pattern so turtles can get around there and they won't get caught. But even the fencing, we have to run that by the state first, because they don't want us to put fencing on something that they consider, you know, a dune that may or may not be there a year from now. So that's difficult. And even what the mayor mentioned was post and ropes. That's even a good one, where post and ropes, a lot of time, if you can put that right at the base of the dune, that does kind of create, you know, it's not a huge barrier, but just a little bit of a barrier that you know, people realize that they shouldn't go beyond the post and rope. So that is usually a little easier to put in actually than sand fencing now, even though, you know, sand fencing is usually a good thing, and so it's a difficult thing, but it is, and it's all about where as soon as you put dune sand down, the state says, well, we're not going to consider that a dune until, you know, it's there for, you know, a year or two and it's some vegetation or that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
Just real quick, the ambassador thing is on the agenda for next week.
Oh, good.
Because we had talked about it. I understand exactly what you're talking about, because we walk, I'm always asking, you know, I start off with, I'm an alderman, please get off the dune. Otherwise, they just look at you like you're stupid. But the second problem we got is, it's the same thing that when the Rotary went into Surf City, we've got new visitors every week. So telling somebody on Tuesday doesn't do anything for the next Tuesday. But I think the ambassadorship, I think, is be a good thing, and what Alice had talked about. But if you have suggestions, because the other issue you got is people go on the beach and don't have an ID. So you're gonna write a ticket for me. My name is John Smith, and I live on Smith Road in Pennsylvania. Find me. So, I mean, it's, you know, any ideas you got, but I really support what Mike was talking about, which is the ambassador program, because for the most part, if you've got somebody going up, and I think Alice said they'll be motorized, to go up and down the beach, but with that many miles of beach, getting people out there is tough, so.
Yes, sir.
Ben Rackley, you already have me in minutes. How about new owners that, wanna walk over your dune to put grass on there, and fertilizer and water and all like that, and don't walk across his dune, but walk across yours? So what do you do in that case?
I don't even know how to answer that one.
And he's from Maryland, so.
Yes, ma'am.
I just sent my fencing, but I got an email this morning, from Government Technology. Oak Island is using drones to monitor their beach. And if it senses people on the dunes, a loudspeaker from the drone will tell them to get off. So I just sent you.
Actually, that's cool. That is cool.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah.
Yeah, I just sent you the.
Yeah, Brian would like to
Actually,
speak.
that's very effective. And not only that, and I'm kind of bragging on them, I'm their town attorney too, but there was a kid that was lost one day and the drone helped locate the child and get him back with the parents. So it's a very effective tool. And as far as the vacation renters, you know, we need to make sure we're communicating with the property managers to educate their renters.
They typically get I don't believe it's the fact that they don't know. It's just that they're doing it. And as far as the drones, thank you, ma'am, that's a great idea. And I'm sure Chief is, I would bet Chief's already added that to his budget wish list.
I will say that the fire chief and I have been meeting and talking about a drone program.
Oh, good.
In looking at potential grants. One obstacle that we do have here that a lot of communities don't have is the military with the flight pattern.
And the no-fly zone.
Yes. So that is a huge hurdle right now that we are trying to come up with creative solutions for. And it probably will require us to meet with a representative from the base at some point to see if we can accomplish that. But that is on our list.
That's a great idea. All right, thank you.
Mayor, to the extent it can be helpful, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can put staff in touch with Oak Island staff. They've worked out a lot of kinks. So.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next item, which is the beach committee. I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem to give an update.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor. We've got some slides coming up here in a minute, hopefully, that will walk us through
Thank
the
you,
new
Fran.
Beach Inlet and Sound Advisory Committee. There's a real need for this committee in North Topsail Beach. We have been without a beach committee for almost 10 years now, and it's more than just the beach. It's the inlet, of course, which we have a high erosion rate, but it's also the sound. If you have been here during some of those king tides, the water's coming out of the sound onto your property or onto the streets. I know it is in my neighborhood, and it's just a king tide, you know, it's not a hurricane. The whole marsh turns into a lake. Well, so we need to be thinking about that, not just about the beach. So the board approved the Beach Inlet Sound Advisory Committee. And we had our first meeting Tuesday. I can see better. I can see better on the big screen than on my little tiny screen. Okay, so really, the reason we need the beach committee is because of institutional memory. This board sitting before you has 3 aldermen that have been on the board during the past 10 years and 2 new board members who are new to the board. So the board has had to spend a lot of time because beach nourishment is a major component of nature's tranquil beauty here in North Topsail Beach. Our vacation destination is because of our dog-friendly beaches, okay? So we've spent a lot of time, but aldermen come and go. So the idea of the BISAC committee, as I like to call it, is to provide a group that can focus on beach issues, inlet issues, and sound issues, develop ideas, alternatives, and give these ideas and alternatives as recommendations to the Board of Aldermen. So we would be developing action items for the Board of Aldermen. We would be recommending granting opportunities to the board and the town manager. We've learned through, primarily through the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission and our advocate in Raleigh, Connie Wilson, the state has put in multi-million dollars of money in all kinds of different storm and wastewater management programs this year, all across the state, not just at the beach, but all across the state. And so we need to be in a position to take advantage of these state dollars that are available to make them solve some of our problems. So we've got to identify these problem solutions and then seek the state funding. The other thing people talk about is sea level rise. It's a difficult topic to talk about, I think. We see a king tide, we see a nor'easter, we're seeing action before our eyes in 10 hours, 12 hours, next day. Sea level rise is happening over decades. We don't really see it. The reason we know it's happening is what? Tide gauges. And we can tell that the tide is higher and higher and higher. What are we going to do about sea level rise? Are we going to build a wall around Topsail Island like in the Netherlands with floodgates to keep the water from the property? No, we can't do that. It's not the purpose of our town. The purpose of our town is to be a vacation destination for the beach. So that's another component of what we need to think about going forward in the future, and this committee is going to have to address that the best they can. All right, next slide. Yeah. So the BISAC is composed of property owners from each of the 5 phases, although currently phase 2 does not have a citizen or a property owner yet. There are 2 aldermen, Alderman Grant and myself. We have a coastal engineer advisor who is a reference person for us on Topsail Island, beach nourishment, sound flooding and so forth. The town manager is ex officio on the committee, which means she sits on the committee but does not vote if we ever do vote. We're trying to get Onslow County to name a liaison from the county because we're trying to improve relationships between the town and the county. It's been rocky at times in the past. We're on a very positive path right now, and we want to continue that ability to cooperate more fully with the county on beach management practices. You know, after all, the county is realizing like $7 million in your tax money each year from our town. So we need to work with them for them to give some of that money back to us. And also the occupancy tax that's collected on our vacation rentals, the county gets half of that. So we're trying to work with them in a more positive way to benefit both the county and the town. And then, of course, the town clerk keeps the minutes for the board. Next slide, please.
Mayor Pro Tem, on the members, the one question I had, and I think folks might be interested if they're in town, is it open for the public to attend if anybody wanted to?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Our last meeting,
I just like
it's an open,
people to
yeah,
know they
it's an
can.
open meeting. We did have several citizens in the audience at our meeting Tuesday. So, yeah, it's open to the public, definitely. Here's the agenda that we went through. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but you can just see we're getting organized as a committee. We're trying to figure out what our role is. We have a draft charter that the board has seen, and the BISAC committee is going to be fine-tuning that charter and coming back within the next 90 days with a proposed charter to finalize what the charter for the committee will be. So we're trying to let the committee kind of evolve and develop, you know, what's going to be their vision, what's going to be their mission as a committee, okay? Let's go to the next slide. So what the committee is working on now is a review of that charter I just mentioned, developing of the vision, the mission, and we're also trying to get everybody up to speed on what I like to call Shoreline Protection 101, which is LGC, what's that stand for? CRC, what's that? Because all these government agencies are all the time using their acronym rather than spelling out what they really are, you know? USDA, well, United States Department of Agriculture, well, you know, CRC, Coastal Resources Commission, so on and so forth. So we need to understand the terminology to be able to communicate effectively among the committee and back to the board. Okay, next. So eventually, we are going to have several things to do. This committee is going to have to revise the town's 30-year beach management program because the Division of Coastal Management, DCM, is requiring that all beach towns have a 30-year beach management plan. We have a plan, but it hasn't been updated really since maybe 10 years ago, before when we had our last beach committee. So we've got to update that, and the plan has to be financially stable. We just can't come up with a plan that's going to raise taxes, you know, 50% because we think it's a good plan. So what we come up with has to be financially sustainable. And then I think the covert issue is really important. The Shoreline Protection Commission has been working on this for years. We've tried different strategies, getting bills introduced to the U.S. Senate, U.S. House of Representatives, and it's a continuing issue. And it would be my hope that we can get some kind of technical amendment to our map unit LO6 to exclude the developed part of that map unit. But so far, Fish and Wildlife, as my friend mentioned earlier, they really are in charge of these map units, and they are very reluctant to change the map unit. You really have to have a strong justification to change the lines in that map unit. So this is something our committee needs to think about and focus on. And then, you know, we are in the process of a environment impact statement for the New River Inlet Management Master Plan, which the Army Corps is partway through this process. It's a long process because it's a slow process. Because each step of this environmental impact statement process has a agenda item, and then it has a reporting period. The reporting period from the various government agencies involved in overseeing the impact statement is 45 days, 120 days, 90 days. So that draws the process out. So hopefully our environmental firm that's working with the town has given us a timeline to expect the Army Corps to issue a final permit in 2023, 2024. However, there are drafts of the environmental impact statement. The preliminary draft, which would be the first one, has not been released yet. Right. It should be released now. We've had 45 days since the last interscoping meeting. Once that preliminary draft is released, then all these agencies go through again, give all the review, public is give its comments too if the public's interested, and then we got the draft environmental impact statement. And then we've got the final environmental impact statement, and there's months between each of those statements. But the final product is the final environmental impact statement that's released by the Army Corps of Engineers commander at the South Atlantic Division in Wilmington, and it will recommend the preferred alternative of the 5 alternatives that are being considered in that environmental impact statement. And it will allow the town to apply to the state if the alternative is a terminal groyne. It will allow the town to apply to the state for a permit to build a groyne, just for the permit. We're talking about, okay, another long timeline from when we apply to when the state might issue a permit. Well, what happens in the case of Ocean Isle Beach, they've gone through this process. Took them 11 years, basically, to get from the start of the EIS to where they got to construction, which they're doing now. And part of the process, once the final EIS is released and we apply for the permit, it's normal for the conservation groups in the state and the nation to contest that decision, no matter what it is. They will probably contest the decision that the Army Corps has come up with. So then we have to pay legal fees to go through the court system to prove that what we're doing is the best thing we can do, best alternative for the environment. So it's a long process, and I'm not optimistic at all that we're going to be ready to apply for a permit in 2023 or 2024. But this committee is going to, once the Corps does come up with their final decision, the BISAC committee then will make a recommendation to the board on how to proceed. Okay. I think that was maybe my last slide, Deb. Yeah, so I could answer any questions if there are any.
Can I just add one thing before the questions, and that is, when he talked about the alternatives that they're considering, it's not just the terminal groyne. It goes from doing nothing to doing more than that. So they've kept an open, what they've told us in our meetings is, who knows? My own personal opinion is, I think there's 0 chance of this thing happening in '24. Just because I think that if you look at what happened down there, I think it was the Audubon Society that took them to court. And this, I would almost guarantee this is going to end up in litigation no matter what the alternative is, so. And then just one other quick thing, I do understand it's on next week's agenda. Apparently one of the people I hassled when I was walking lives in 2, and we will be hopefully adding the person from phase 2 to the committee as well.
Do we have any questions for Mayor Pro Tem? Yes, ma'am.
Furthermore, Lisa, it's for revenue. So when you talk about financially sustainable, like with taxes and stuff, how do you project how something like this is gonna cost when it takes so long to get there? And how do you plan to pay for that, given that timeline? You know, like, I don't want a specific, I know you can't give me a specific answer, but good grief, what?
Well, yeah, well, the bright side of this story is we are still dealing with the USDA loan for the Phase 5 work in 215. So all of our Fund 30 money goes towards that loan. Hopefully, we have contracted with our financial advisor, Mr. Carter, and we are going to refinance that loan to allow us to pay it off sooner, maybe 3 to 5 years instead of the original 11 years. So while things are going on with getting that loan paid off, by the time we get the loan paid off, let's say in 5 years, then we can start saving the roughly $3 million that's in Fund 30 from revenues each year to use for new beach projects. So right now, the limiting factors as far as finances go is getting the debt resolved on the Phase 5 USDA loan, because the LGC, Local Government Commission, is not gonna let us borrow more money until we pay that loan off. And we shouldn't have to borrow a lot of money in the future. That's why I say financially sustainable. We want to be able to do these beach projects in a planned manner so that we have the income, revenue we need each year to do the project.
And that loan you're referring to is the 2015
Yes.
project?
Yes.
And that was a town project?
Yes.
That was a town decision to do that?
That was.
To take that loan?
That was,
Okay.
yeah.
And one of the things I'm hoping that folks who watch this, or those of you all that came today, understand is how much time and effort goes in to try and make sure that we're making proper decisions for the whole town. We're not just focused on one specific area of the town. The federal project decision was a huge, painstaking decision for the town, but at the end of the day, the board feels it definitely was the right one to not increase taxes, to get this USDA loan paid off, and to go through the FEMA process to get additional sand on those 4 miles of the beach so that we can renourish it back to what it was. And I just want to appreciate all the time that Mayor Pro Tem has put into. He's been really pushing for this beach advisory committee for, I think, at least 4 years now. So I'm just thrilled that that's gotten off to a good start, and I think that's going to help the board make informed decisions as well. Yes, ma'am.
And then if I could just add something to to Mike's comment. One of the reasons we've got the advisor that we're adding is he worked with Topsail, and if you look at what, they turned down the Army Corps project.
Right.
Okay, and they've done a lot of that stuff themselves. There's funding sources out there, and part of, Mike had asked me to be on the committee. We're gonna look at all the funding sources. The reality is, and if you look at paid parking, that money is gonna go towards the beach fund as well. Fund 30 is the beach fund, for those people that don't know. 10 is the operating fund. I believe we've got enough money in there, but I also think that in working with Mike and the committee, how do we spend it? We look at all the options that are out there, what funding is out there. For example, I'm gonna make up, we've got a Phase 9, and if we could get somebody to pay 100% of Phase 9, that might move up in the hierarchy. But it's not just, we were talking at the beach committee the other day, it's not just what you want to do, it's what you can afford to do, and how do you pay for it. And the idea behind this committee is to do the planning behind those type of things and have a town-wide beach plan, not, I live in Phase 3, so obviously I'm in the middle of this thing. But getting all that stuff done, getting the funding in place, and frankly, USDA loan has been an albatross around because of all the covenants and stuff. And if you go, or this coming week, we're looking at refinancing that, getting that off the town. As Mike said, paying it off much more quickly, that frees up a lot of money per year. But the smart thing for the town to do is say, okay, this is how much money we've got. How should we spend it? What do the revenues look like? Forecasting the revenues using the town's financial advisor. What does that look like and how we're gonna pay for it? So.
And Lee, the last thing I wanna say is, Surf City pretty much is the same type of beach. North Topsail is unique in that we have different types of beaches because we have the inlet. And until we embrace each other and support each other on our difference of the types of beaches, and I'm hoping that's what this committee can do, is bring us together in just embracing the different types of beaches, because that's what we have. It's not a continuous type of beach. We have different things we need to do in different areas.
Exactly,
North
exactly.
Topsail Beach is that way also.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like us, North Topsail and Topsail,
Right.
they have an inlet also. So, they're gaining sand every year, and we're losing sand every year. So it's just what the Lord wants to take.
Yeah.
It's just what he's gonna do.
Before we move on, I'd like to recognize 2 members of the BISAC committee in the audience, Deborah Train from Phase 1 and Larry Strother from Phase 5, and I don't see any other phases represented today, but thank them for being here and being involved.
Yeah, and I think that one of our goals is to stop the division between the town. We're not making, we're trying to make the right decisions for everybody that is a resident or an owner in the town. It's not Phase 1 against Phase 5 or Phase 5 against Phase 1, and yes, I'm right in the middle too with nothing. So we as a board are really trying to just make sure we're making the right decisions as we need to and plan effectively. So I'm excited about the committee, Mike.
And one other thing, Surf City has a lot of commercial properties, so they have a lot more money coming into them. We don't have the commercial property.
They don't have Cobra.
So we have to really, and they don't have Cobra, so we're unique in our own way compared.
That's okay.
Will the, will the BSAC committee have like meeting minutes on a page? Will they have a page there on the
Yeah,
website maybe, or
yeah, that's the
somehow to
plan.
get there and see?
Yeah, we'll have minutes, and we'll have our own spot on the shoreline protection page.
And if you all haven't checked out the updated shoreline protection page, I would just greatly appreciate it if you do, because I think it will answer a lot of questions that you might have about historical information as well as what's going on right now. And the staff is just really working hard to try and get as much out as possible.
Yeah, I could add that we've got it up to date as we could have it as of January. And there's two ways to look at the information. There's what we call a shoreline matrix, which looks at it by what phase, what's been done in that phase in the past, and what's coming up in that phase. And then the other way to look at shoreline protection in North Topsail Beach is the chronology, which is another link there you'll find on the shoreline protection page, and that goes back to sort of the beginning of shoreline protection North Topsail Beach and works up to the present. So you can get a historical perspective that way, or you can look at the matrix by phases to understand what's going on in each of the 5 phases.
And if we have no additional questions, I think I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Thank you, everyone.